Okay, we're going to try this video again. I've tried it a couple times and I have children and husbands interrupting and internet just went out and et cetera, et cetera. But hey, goes along with what we're teaching today, and that is irony when the unexpected happens. And that's inevitable when you're doing virtual classes, right? So learning new ways to teach you guys during this time. However, you have already learned the standard 8.6 on irony because we did review that this year before spring break. So this should be just a refresher course for you. I hope that everything jumps back into your memory as we go through the examples for irony. You'll remember everything that Miss Sutton taught you back during our normal school year. So let's just get started. I'll begin with some pictures, and I hope that these will show up on your screen from my iPad. Maybe if I stay back here, I don't know. I've got this lamp that's a little bit crazy too. These were some pictures. Some of these we used in the classroom, and some of these are new that I've added that show you examples of irony. All right, so here's the first one. It's Electrical Avenue, yet there's no outlet. So that's just kind of a funny with the irony there. This truck, I hope you can see it. It says, "Sure we can." Yeah, sure we can. But I don't know that they can because they obviously can't fit or somebody can't drive. So there's some irony within that picture. Here's the fun one that we had in class. Nothing is written in stone, and I hope that you can tell that that phrase is actually carved into stone. So yes, it can be written in stone. But of course, this also touches on another standard that we have with idioms, that they don't really mean nothing is written in stone. What they mean is things aren't set, that we can make changes to that. We are experiencing that with 2020 in a virtual classroom, and that we are always needing to be open to change. Don't put anything in stone, be flexible. But there's some irony though, because they etched it in stone. All right, this is an interesting one, kind of sad, but it says Mississippi's literacy program shows improvement. And they spelled Mississippi wrong. So that's not something that you want to do when you're talking about literacy in our great state. So somebody needs to go to literacy class. We definitely need some proofreading going on. So that's ironic that in an article about literacy, they can't spell. Okay. Phone out of service, give us a call. What's the irony here? You can't make a phone call if your phone's out of service. So that's a little tough. Please do not tape anything to the glass. What did they do? They taped something to the glass. So that's a good example of irony. This one I know you saw in class where you have the fastener sign that needs a fastener, holding it up. This was a new one. I don't know if you can see, but it's the DVD Unbroken for that movie, and the DVD is broken. Here we have the ride Wind Seeker. And then down here, Wind Seeker ride is currently closed due to high winds. There's an example. And then I had to put this one on there. I don't know if you can see it. I hope you can, but it's Healthy Hands hand sanitizer. And if you can see, this thing is nasty. There's an example of irony, because you wouldn't want to use this particular hand sanitizer for sanitary hands. So all of those are examples of irony, specifically situational irony, because they all are the opposite of what you would expect to happen. And we'll look at the specifics in that in this PowerPoint I'm going to show you, and let's see if I can get this to come up. It would be ironic if your computer teacher didn't know how to use your slides, but maybe it's not so ironic that your old English teacher has a little trouble with it. Okay, so the first time I did this, I didn't realize you guys could still see me, and it was quite boring. So hopefully I'll spruce it up a little bit. Well, I can't start with a recap. How about that? Hang on, give me just a second. Spoiler. All right, I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna have to stop it. Oh, look, it's at the bottom. I got it. Okay. I don't want to have to stop and start again. Irony, the standard. Your standard is R.L.8.6. Analyze how differences in the points of view of the characters and the audience or you or reader, that's you, for example, created through the use of dramatic irony, create such effects as suspense or humor. That's what we want to look at closely today, that dramatic irony. So what is irony overall? As a literary device, irony is a contrast between expectations for a situation and what is reality. This can be a difference between the surface meaning of something that is said and the underlying meaning. It can also be a difference between what might be expected to happen and what actually occurs. You see this a lot in your movies, and hopefully you're reading those books and you find it in those books that you're reading as well. All right, types of irony. There are 3. Verbal irony. We talked about middle schoolers being experts at this verbal irony. It occurs when a speaker speaks something contradictory to what he intends to say. To define it simply, it occurs when a character uses a statement with underlying meanings that contrast with its literal meaning. It's beautiful weather we're having outside today that as I'm recording this when it's raining outside. That's an example of verbal irony. Writers rely on the audience's intelligence for inferring the hidden meanings they intend to convey. So we'll use another standard within this one. It's inferencing. And you have to be able to make an inference to be able to figure out irony a lot of times, okay? So that's your first one. The second one is situational irony. This occurs when something happens that is very different from what was expected. Okay, so in cases of situational irony, there's often a twist that plays with the expectations of the audience and or characters. So we often read stories in my class with plot twists. Some of you love it, some of you not so much. When we have plot twists at the end of a story, this is an example of situational irony. Some of those stories end in cliffhangers too, and we don't know. We have to just kind of make up our own ending to that, but makes it more fun, right? All right, how I remember situational irony as opposed to the other 2 is I think about the line, the quote from the movie where it says, "Oh, we have a situation." I don't remember what movie that's from, and I can't do the little accent. But I think about that and I think, it appears that we have an unexpected situation. And that plays in my mind. I'm going, unexpected situation, situational irony. Nobody expected that to happen. So that's what that is. That can help you figure that out if you were ever asked, what type of irony is this? Situational irony. Your third one is dramatic irony. It is an important device that is commonly found in plays, movies, theaters, and sometimes poetry. Storytellers use this irony as a useful plot device for creating situations which the audience knows more about the particular situation than does the character. They know about the causes of the conflicts. Think about your horror stories. The resolutions, you know what's going to happen at the end. You know how it's going to be solved before your leading character or your actor. How I remember this, dramas, dramatic irony. You know more than the characters do in a specific situation. And we'll see some examples in just a minute. All right, why do writers use irony? Well, you think about all those essays that we write in English class, and we want to write those with a specific audience in mind. And we're not writing them just so your English teacher can read them. I mean, I know what a lot of what you write is, but we want to think about our writing as something that people want to read. I've taken the time to do this. I want people to be interested in it and read it. Same for your writers of your books, same for your writers of your plays, and the writers who write the scripts for the movies. They want people to be interested in their work. So you can use irony as a great tool for this. Writers most often use irony to create humor or suspense. It triggers emotions in the reader to get the reader actively involved in the story. When you get your emotions involved, when you want to know more on what happens next, that's what we want in a good story, in a good book. All right, here's an example of irony. Take a look at this picture. Do you see it? She says, great. All right. What type of irony is expressed in this photo? Verbal, situational, dramatic. It's verbal irony. I know you got that. Because does she think that this is great, that her drink has spilled in her lap? No, she does not. So she is saying the opposite of what she actually means. That is verbal irony. All right, so the character did not think it was great that she spilled her drink in her lap, yet she says great. Notice here that you don't have an exclamation point at the end. There's not a whole lot of feeling like great, or somebody didn't throw that on her or fall and trip and spill that on her. If that had happened and she'd said great, or gosh, you handled that situation very well, you get some emotion in that, and you get some the mood changes, you get some attitude in that. That's where we have sarcasm. We talked a lot about that in my English class this year, that I have to admit I'm pretty good at sarcasm. Most of my students in middle school are good at sarcasm. But there is a little bit of a difference between verbal irony and sarcasm. Here she does not have sarcasm. It's just verbally ironic that she says great and doesn't really mean it. Okay, opposite of what she means. Again, if she were pointing this directly at someone, mocking someone, or saying, meaning you're not really great at what you just did, but yet I'm going to say great or good job, that's when we have sarcasm involved. All right, so that's an example of verbal irony. Take a look at this picture. Nothing could explain it more than a fire hydrant on fire. What type of irony is this? Situational irony. No one would expect a device that could help save your life from a fire or protect you from a fire to catch on fire. We did talk about this in our class this year when we had the example of an actual firehouse catching on fire, or a robber getting robbed. That would be situational irony. You would not expect that to happen. All those pictures that I showed you on the iPad are examples of situational irony. You wouldn't expect those. You as a reader don't expect it to happen. The characters don't know it's going to happen. We have a situation. Okay, that's situational irony. All right, take a look at this picture. You hear the music, not Baby Shark, but dun, dun. Okay, so below the surface, we as a reader or as an audience, you see that there's a shark coming up. The character in the story, the main character, this poor helpless soul swimming, does not see that shark. So that is called dramatic irony, the drama. You know what's going to happen. You almost want to shout out to her to look out. In most of the horror movies, you know that the weirdo or monster or whatever, where they're hiding, you want to shout out to the characters, don't be stupid and open that door, or don't go outside. How dumb is that? That's all examples of dramatic irony. Okay, so example would be Batman. You know, as an audience, who is hiding behind the mask. That is an example of dramatic irony. Okay. Here we go, dramatic. You know the secret. That's another good example, or good way to express it, is if you know the secret that's going on. Now, in movies, it's portrayed on the screen, where in books, the writer has to use specific wording and special ways that they word things to create this irony, so that you as a reader can figure that out, so that you know something the character does not. And I'll give you some examples in just a minute. All right, here we go. More dramatic irony from these writers of great movies and books. And these, I hope, have made a lasting impression on you. The first one in the middle of the page is Mulan. We did not read Mulan in class, but we did use Mulan's story to talk about another standard. If any of you have used the Ready workbooks, that standard talked about how we use old stories with this theme that girls can do anything a guy can do. That was one of the themes. And we transposed that into a new, updated 2020 type story. An example would be, oh gosh, Bella and the Bulldogs. I can't remember what. My son just binge watched that on Disney Channel, and that's where the girl goes in and plays football. So that's a whole different standard. This dramatic irony standard that we want to talk about today is the fact that if you cover half the screen, you can see Mulan as the guy, but you as a reader know that underneath all that armor, cover the other screen, and you see that she's actually a female. This is an example of dramatic irony. You as the reader know this. The other characters in the story do not. All right, great example. The Gift of the Magi. We did not read this in class. I referenced it or alluded to it in class. And this is a classic tale by O. Henry, where you have a couple that is very much in love. The husband goes and sells his pocket watch, his prized possession, to purchase a comb for his wife's beautiful hair for Christmas because they were on hard times and they had no extra money and loved each other very much and wanted to do something special. So he sells his pocket watch to purchase a beautiful comb for her hair. Well, you as a reader know that the opposite side of the book is the woman, the wife, has cut off her hair and sold her beautiful hair to make money to buy her husband a chain for his prized possession pocket watch. So at the end, they come together and they open their presents and see this, and it's just a beautiful, sweet story and a great example of dramatic irony. Daniel Keyes, we read Flowers for Algernon, this short story, which is actually a pretty lengthy story. Had lots of dramatic irony in there. One is an example where you as a reader see that Algernon starts to fade away, and you can make inferences to figure out what's going to end up happening. The same thing with Charlie. All right, so that's an example of dramatic irony. We read The Telltale Heart this year in my class. If you have not read this book in the other classes, or short story in the other classes, do so around Halloween. It's a lot more fun. Edgar Allan Poe is a very gruesome writer. This story has dramatic irony in that you as a reader know where the old man is at the end when the police come in to the house. So I'll just leave that for those of you that haven't read it. That's an example of dramatic irony there. And The Outsiders, my favorite. All right, so we have the book The Outsiders. Don't watch the movie first, please. Read your book. It has all types of irony in there. We'll look at some of that in a minute. But dramatic irony in the scene. I don't want to give it away. We'll talk about it. Lots of times that you'll see it. If I open the cover of this book, you'll read Things Are Rough All Over. I do want to just go ahead and allude to that as verbal irony, where she says things are rough all over, and you're like, also can be situational irony, because you as a reader don't really get it, that socias have things that are rough, but at the end of the book, you realize that they do have things that are rough in their life, even though they have all the money. Money isn't everything. It doesn't make for a perfect world. All right, and our last story that we'll talk about is a retrieved reformation that we also read in my class today. I apologize for those of you that weren't in my class and maybe haven't read all these stories. This is another O. Henry story. If you do research on O. Henry, which I'm sure you won't, he uses irony, dramatic irony in almost all of his stories. This particular one, you have the former bank robber, who decides or falls in love with a banker's daughter. That is ironic. You have irony where at the end, he's got to end up breaking into a safe to save his future niece's life. And what does he choose? There's a little bit of situational irony because you may not know which way he's going to go with that, but you do know what's inside that suitcase. So that's an example of dramatic irony. You also know who is waiting at the door for when he walks out of that bank. You know who's waiting for him there. And that's another example of dramatic irony, where you as the reader know more than your main character. All right, so fun examples of dramatic irony. Here are some for you to guess. All right, take a look at this quote. How'd you like that haircut to start just below the chin? It's from The Outsiders. You may remember who said that. Happened to be a Soch. Flashback to that scene. This is an example of verbal irony. He does not mean to give him a haircut below the chin. He's threatening to cut his throat. Okay, so sorry if that's gruesome for you guys that haven't read that book, but that's just an example of what's going on in this book and an example of verbal irony. This scene is not in the movie. Be sure you read the book. Okay, here's another one from Flowers for Algernon, where Charlie says, "They're really my friends and they like me," where he's talking about Joe and Frank. Okay, we have it in quotation marks, so you may think, verbal irony, verbal irony. But does he mean what he says? Yeah, he means what he says. He really believes that they are his friends and they like him. So that can't be verbal irony. This is an example of dramatic irony because the reader knows that Joe and Frank are making fun of Charlie, but Charlie does think they're really his friends. All right, so dramatic irony. See if you can figure this one out. The main ironic twist occurs at the very end. Silky Bob traveled 1,000 miles to meet his old friend Jimmy Wells. However, Jimmy Wells became a policeman who recognizes Bob as the man wanted by the Chicago police and has him arrested. What type of irony is that? Situational, because even the reader, even you, did not know that the policeman was Jimmy Wells until the very end of the story. And some of you were still questioning, was that really Jimmy Wells? So we have a total plot twist there at the end. You have to put the pieces of the story together to figure this out. Again, using your inferencing skills to make it all fit together, and you figure out exactly who the policeman was at the end of the story. All right, look at this picture. Scenes from the movie, The Outsiders. All right, I hope you've read the book. You kind of know what's going on here. I didn't want to give too much away. Dramatic irony is in this scene in the book, even though it's different in the movie. The reader knows the gun is not loaded in this scene. This adds tension in the book and the movie. However, I want you to think about this. If you did not read the book first, how would you know that the gun was not loaded in this scene? In the book, the writer uses words to express that. In the movie, they don't say, hey, gun's not loaded. So think about that. How did the producers create this in the movie? And that's another standard for another day where you compare the book and the movie. And we did talk about that at the end of the year, which ironically, we did not expect to be the end of the year. So another example of irony, situational. All right, if you said situational irony for this particular slide, you were also correct. This shows two different types. You as a reader did not expect Dally's fate to be this. And if you stop and think about it, there's another Greaser story that involves situational irony. And spoiler alert, if you weren't with us as we read this book and watched the movie, but it's Johnny. Unfortunately, that's another example of situational irony. You did not expect that. This is why I like reading this book in class, is to see all that emotional facial expressions or your emotions come forward in class as we read this book together and see all this irony, because it's a shocker, sad shocker, unfortunately. So sorry to do that to y'all, but that's what books are for. Make us feel all that emotion. All right, recap. There are three types of irony: verbal, situational, dramatic. Writers use irony to trigger your emotions, humor, and or suspense. Remember in the scene where they're trying to get into the church and he says, where's the teacher? Can he not, was he too scared to get in the window? And Johnny says, nope, too fat. Not really irony. But we use humor in lots of different ways in our writing to bring those emotions forward. And irony is a very good one to incorporate. All right, when you add attitude to that verbal irony, don't forget that you were going to get sarcasm there. So you might see that term used interchangeably with verbal irony. It is a little bit different. All right, so let's go back to your Batman one last little ironic situation here. If I took that mask off and you found this grandma under the mask, what type of irony would that be? That's situational because you wouldn't expect that. All right. Those are some examples, some fun examples. They are everywhere. If you watch the movie Monsters Inc., I couldn't figure out how to put a video clip in here, but where the monsters are scared of the little girl, that situational irony where you wouldn't expect that. So it's a total twist of what you expect. So have fun with that. Look for it all around you. If you're reading a book that has irony in it, please send me an email, msutton@pcsd.ms. Let me know what you're reading and the irony that you found out there in your world. See you.